Organizational behavior, human behavior at work. Chapter 3, managing communications. LOs, the two-way communication process, barriers to communications, factors leading to effective communication, downward and upward communication problems, the roles of questioning and listening, social networking tools, the impact of electronic communications, organizational grapevines and rumors. Communication is transfer of information and understanding from one person to another. It requires a sender and a receiver. The goal is to have the receiver understand the intended message, act upon the received message if required, not complete till the message is received, interpreted, and understood. So this is where people break down. A lot of times when we have issues with people, many times it involves the breakdown of communication. What this is saying here is communication is a two-part process. One, it originates with one individual, the sender, and it concludes with the receiver. And does the receiver understand exactly what it is you're actually saying? But it takes two people to actually have communication. When you have a breakdown in communication, it causes problems. Importance of communication. It helps an organization achieve its goals by accomplishing all the basic management functions. It facilitates better performance and improves job satisfaction. Open communication contributes to transparency. Transparency being open, candid, clear, honest, and accessible. So when you have effective communication, it does allow organizations, people, and groups to perform better. And I call it a well-oiled machine. People are sending messages, people are receiving messages, and everybody understands what's supposed to be done. And one of the things when it comes to communication, which is really big now, back years ago, we didn't talk about this as much as we do now, transparency. You want to be as transparent as possible, particularly in today's society with today's generations of people who are currently working. Transparency goes a long way. And when you do this, it helps create bonds amongst people because it's built upon trust and honesty. Managers. The importance of communication. Managers initiate communication. So when we talk about managers, they pass on messages to and interpret communications from employees. So you see the two-way process there. The manager initiates stuff to people and he interprets stuff that comes back up. Executive summary. Tool used to communicate to employees and superiors. Provides concise highlights of a longer document or set of reports, or aids in rapid decision making. So when you have this executive summary, this is when it provides information. This doesn't tell you a story per se. It highlights things that needs to be put into a report to tell you what it is. And it aids in people who are making rapid decisions. What are the highlights? What are the things that I need to know versus the things that'd be nice to know? Communication process. So when you see when it originates with the sender, the communication process, you see the sender. So if we look at the arrow going on top, that goes over from sender to receiver. So this is where a sender would develop an idea. They will encode it. Basically, what's your meaning and what details are you trying to convey? And then you will send it, transmit. The receiver gets it, and then they have to decode what you're selling. So they try to read in the instructions that you gave. Once they do that and they feel like they understand, then they must accept it, and then they must put it into use. And you see two-way feedback because see now it comes back to this receiver, to the sender, letting them know, I got it, I'm on it, and I'm going to go ahead and take care of it. And you also see there's area right there called barriers, bridge of meaning. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but barriers are basically impediments to you being able to have good communication. So when we look at the two-way communication process, key to successful encoding lies in the process of framing, key to successful encoding lies in the process of framing an issue for presentation. Framing, usage of rich, colorful, carefully selected language to shape the perceptions of recipients. So how are you framing something? How are you getting it across? How is it being conveyed to people? That's how you framed it. Benefits, both parties experience greater satisfaction, frustration is prevented, improved work accuracy. So when you do this, this allows you to move forward. There's a greater success. Frustration is minimized. But listen, when you show me somebody frustrated, I show you somebody's not working at their most efficient level. And accuracy is better too. So there are benefits to doing this when you do about framing in the proper manner. Potential problems of two-way communications. Polarized, taking extreme positions. So when you have information and where you look at it and someone is taking an extreme position, I'll give you an example. If I tell you well, if we do this right here, we could get a bad result. Here's a polarized version of that. If we do this right here, we're going to get a bad result, and it's going to be horrible, and it's going to mess us up, and we're not going to be able to fix it for the next 6 months. That's polarizing. Defensive reasoning results in a drive towards control and emphasis on winning. So when you do that, it's like, okay, my results are driven by me wanting to win, not necessarily to work with you, or not necessarily try to be fair. But my emphasis is on winning and getting the result almost by any means necessary. Cognitive dissonance. This is internal conflict and anxiety that occurs when people receive information incompatible with their value systems or prior decisions or other information they may have. So this is when you tell someone, I need you to go handle this. Well, the reason that that's a conflict is because you're asking them to handle something in a manner which actually your company policy says is illegal or is not appropriate for them to do, thereby putting them in a dilemma. Or you're asking someone to do something against their value system. And I give you an example. One time a young police officer was asked to go and in an undercover capacity and to go into a strip club where women were getting naked. That was against his value system, and he stressed, made it known to his boss that this is not good for me to do because I don't believe in this type of stuff and I think it's sinful. His boss selected somebody else to do it because it was against his value system. More problems. Form of self-revelation to others and a source of evaluation. So face saving, attempt to preserve or enhance one's valued self-concept when it's attacked. Okay, someone basically, you've heard of this, trying to save face. Well, then let me say, well, there's a reason why I did it this way and it's not my fault. I'm saving face and the blame ain't mine. Regrettable. Messages that hurt one's self-concept, or personal image, or social honor. And this is where things are said or done, and it appears that someone feels like they have been wounded by it, hurt personally. Use of an inappropriate tone when conveying a message. This is a very serious problem, and it happens every day, where people use an inappropriate tone when conveying a message. And I'll give you an example. Here's the first example. Linda, could you go ahead and take care of this for me? I need it as soon as possible. Linda, I need you to do this, and I need you to do it right now. Totally different. One would be considered fair. The second one would probably be considered inappropriate tone. Noise, barrier to communication, emerge in physical environments, individual emotions, affect communication by completely preventing it, partially filtering it, giving it incorrect meaning. So when we say this, it's noise. We're not physically talking about something you just hear. I'm going to go into more detail right here. So when you look at this, you see personal barriers, the noise. You see personal barriers arise from human emotions, values, and poor listening habits. So this happens quite a bit too because people are communicating on a daily basis. So what you have sometimes is people's emotions can get involved in things, or they have poor listening habit. Well, that can lead to basically not getting the best result. Psychological distance, feeling of being emotionally separated. A lot of times you see this as when somebody's got something going on in their personal life. It doesn't allow them to come to work and perform at their maximum level because they got something psychological going on, and it has nothing to do with work. Physical barriers, communication interference that occur in the environment in which the communication takes place. You can have physical barriers and stuff because you're required to communicate with somebody and they're in a different building. Well, and let's just say that you're required not only to communicate with them, but you're required to work with them, but they're in a different building. So it hinders you to a certain degree because you're not co-located. And so when we look at the study of spatial separation, And that's right there is going to feed right into that. You know, when you have people who are not physically located in the same place. Semantic barriers arise from limitations in the symbols which communication carriers. So when somebody says semantics, science of meaning, that means I say something, you take it one way, but I mean it another way. And that's semantics. Uh, Jargon is specialized language of the group. Okay, you're using jargon, so you may say, okay, can you go over and take care of the PTW for me and make sure you get to that, go to the XYZ 3 and make sure it's working. That's specialized jargon. Okay, what if I'm giving this specialized jargon to somebody who doesn't understand? They're not in my group or they're new to the group. Challenging for people with different cultures. So you find this also sometimes with people who come from different cultures, words mean different things, or they're said different ways, which so it could be a challenge. Inference, interpreting symbols based upon assumptions instead of facts. So, you know, when I look at this symbol right here, I think it means this, but in actuality, it does not. It means something else. And because I'm interpreted it wrong, I'm going to implement a wrong action. Words, communication symbols, words. Every common word has several meanings. Context, environment surrounding the use of the word. So when you look at the words, they have different meanings. And a lot of times this can be due to cultural, racial, ethnicity, gender, age, all types of things. When you start looking at words and what their meaning is, it means different things to different people. You have to make sure that when you're using a word and you're saying a word, that the word you're using is correct, not only for what you want to convey, but for the people who's also receiving it. Social cues, positive or negative bits of information. So social cues is like, for instance, what do you look at and say, okay, this is socially acceptable and this is not. For instance, a social cue. I have to cough and I'm around 3 people sitting at the table and I cough. I don't cover my mouth when I cough. Well, that's a social cue. It's a negative bit right there. And that's an act right there. But you also have social cues when it comes to bits of information. You know, what's appropriate to convey and say and what's not. And understanding the social cues or what's acceptable at that time will help. Readability, process of making writing and speech more understandable. And this is one of the things that I had to learn myself. When you're writing or you're trying to convey something, a speech or anything else, most people have a tendency to want to write for themselves. In actuality, that's wrong. You're writing for the reader or the audience. And you must keep that in mind when you do prepare something like that in writing. Readability. I'm preparing this for a group of who? What type of group? Okay, what is this? Is a group of teachers that I'm preparing this for. Okay, if it's a group of teachers, then I wouldn't write it and convey it as if it was a group of attorneys. Pictures clarify word communication. So a lot of people are visual. Pictures can help clarify some stuff sometimes. If you show, not only do you tell them, but you also have some illustrations or some diagrams or something that can show them, because many people are visual. Communication symbols should be combined with well-chosen words and actions to be effective. And so we look at the actions, we look at nonverbal communication, communication through one's actions. So this is when I don't say something, but I do something. And guess what? People watch what you do. And what you do conveys a message. How you do something, you know, when you do something, to the level of scope and nature of when you do something. Aspects. Failure to act is an important way of communication. So one of the things I view aspects is failure to act is an important way of communication. That means it's something either you can't do, you don't want to do, or you forgot about. But it's communicating something being negative. Actions speak louder than words. You know, you have some people, there are people out here who are in a relationship with their family and their friends, and they tell them they love them every day. But their actions don't reflect that. And then there are some people who never utter the words, I love you, on a daily basis, but their acts all day long and all week long shows that they love and care for you. Action speaks louder than words. Credibility gap, difference between what is said and what is done. And what is said and what is done. For instance, if you're a leader and you have people who work for you, and you basically telling them, do as I say, but don't do as I do. And I'll give you an example. I'm telling you all to work hard from 9 to 5, take breaks on time and do this. But when they see me, I'm not working hard. I'm taking extensive breaks and I'm leaving work early. That's a credibility gap. Communication symbols. Factors influence communication credibility, trustworthiness, expertise, dynamism. So when you look at this, it comes into factors. These are things that come into play. Are you somebody that I can trust? Are you someone that's dynamic in what they do? Are you an expert? You have expertise. And here's the thing that really looks bad on people. When they're not trustworthy, but they try to portray that they are. Usually when people say that they're not, it's because of a past history. Expertise. Either you know what you're talking about or you don't. It looks very bad when somebody tries to fake that. And they're dynamic. When you look at people who are dynamic and what they do and stuff, they have a tendency to make other people want to buy in and stuff. You see a lot of times of people who are very good speakers. Body language, communication, meaning with one's body is in interpersonal interaction, important supplement to verbal communication. This is something that's very important. One of the things that we used to learn, particularly in law enforcement, where we were interviewing criminals and witnesses and victims and things, people can tell you one thing, but their body can say something else. Give you an example. I can tell you all day long that I didn't do something or I don't know something or whatever else. But my body, if you look at my body language, it may be telling you something else. And it may be telling you that I'm lying. Figure 3.2, write clear writing guidelines. Pause right here and I want you to read through these. Figure 3.3, primary impacts of barriers on the steps in communication. So we look at these personal barriers, physical barriers, and somatic barriers. So if we look at development, you see emotions, how it can come into play. And that's a personal barrier, somebody's personal feelings. Encode, that's semantics and symbols. So now somebody's I'm encoding and saying something, conveying it one way, and they've got to try to decode it at some point. So my encoding is not incorrect. Transmit. So my emotions can be involved in how I transmit something. Meaning I'm transmitting something, either I'm writing it or I'm saying it, but you can tell that I'm upset when I'm doing it. That's transmitting. And then you have physical barriers, noise, that can affect how something transmits and just stuff. If someone can't actually hear what's being said properly, and I'm only hearing certain words because of the technology is breaking up, or there's some other type of hot noise around or whatever else. Geographical distance, transmitting stuff. Are you getting stuff to people in different locations, and is it getting to them timely? Receive, listening. Are you listening properly? Are you halfway listening, thinking about something else while you listen to somebody else? Psychological distance. You might be somewhere else because you got something going on somewhere else. Noise, again, same thing. If you got a bunch of noise around you, it can disturb, may not be hearing, or you got shoddy technology. Geographical distance is also an issue. Decode. Okay, this is when the information comes back from the receiver. Okay, I got to decode. I'm sorry. This information that goes from the person who originates it to the receiver, sender to the receiver, and you know what? The receiver's got to decode. And emotions can get involved in that. Listening can get involved in that. Except the receiver has got to accept this message, and psychological factors can come into play in that as well as semantics, and they've got to use it, and they got to get feedback. Psychological distance can come into play on those as well. Downward communication. So flow of information in an organization from higher to lower levels of authority. Key to better communication is to have sensitive managers who ensure careful preparation of messages, convey messages with candor, energy, personal stories, warmth, are open to honest communication with employees. So when you're sending information down the food chain, from leaders to people down below you, you got to take into consideration what kind of message are you sending? Are you sending one that's going to connect with people? You got to be careful about your preparation of it, because you want to say things in a proper way, and you also want to convey these things, positive, uplifting, and truthful. And when possible, people love stories. Always give stories when you can, or examples, and be open to honest communication with employees. You know, that's one of the things that people understand. When people know when they can speak freely and when they can't. And if they can't speak freely, then guess what? There's some things you'll never know. Prerequisites for managers when you're doing this downward communication. Develop a positive communication attitude. Have your head in the right place before you send that message. Because if you don't, if you're upset about something that day, it's going to be conveyed in your message. Continually work to be informed. Always try to get information, not only from people above you, not only from people on your level, but also from people below you. Consciously plan for communication. Make sure that you set aside some time to plan to prepare communication. Don't do it when you got 100 things on your mind. Develop trust. Develop trust in people by being honest and being open and transparent. Problem. Communication overload. Employees receive more communication inputs than they can process and more than they need. Okay, if you're bombarding them with too much information, you're setting them up for failure. It's one thing if somebody is asked to do 2 things or 3 things and execute on them. It's another thing you've told them 15 things they need to do, and you've overloaded them with too much information, communication. Well, you're setting yourself up for failure because there's a high probability some things won't get done, or they're going to rush and not do anything proper, and they're going to seek to cut corners. Conditions encouraging acceptance of a communication. Acknowledge legitimacy of the sender. Okay, is this a legitimate sender? Is this somebody who's sending me a message that should be? Or is this somebody that should not be sending me a message? Perceived competence of the sender relative to the issue. Is this person qualified? Does this person know how to do the job that's trying to tell me how to do it? Trust in the sender as a leader and as a person. It's 2 things that I find when I see people who are good leaders that they have. People look at them and they trust them in a professional capacity, and they also trust them in a personal capacity. That's 2-pronged. Perceived credibility of the messages received. Okay, is this a credible source? Where did you get this information from? Does it make sense? Acceptance of the task and goals that the communication is trying to accomplish. If somebody doesn't accept that task or goals, they're not going to execute on it. That is a must. And if they don't, there's a problem, and you need to figure out what that is. Power of the sender to enforce sanctions on the receiver. Okay, if you don't do these, what's the consequences? You have to be able to convey that. What's the consequences of you not getting this done or the fallout from it? Communication needs of employees at lower levels. Job instruction, objective requirements, opportunities, problem areas on the job should be stated. This is when you're telling people at these lower levels, this is why I say transparency. Give them as much information as they need to be able to do the job. Let them know what the opportunities are, what's the good, bad, and the ugly. If there's some problems, you got to tell them what it is. Don't let it, well, they'll figure it out, or I'm not going to tell them this because I don't want them to worry. No, let them know up front. Performance feedback helps people know what to do and how well they are going to meet their goals. You got to let people know when they're giving when you give feedback about what they're doing. Are they doing a good job or they're not? Feedback seeking behavior. Searching for information about one's prior performance and possible areas of improvement. This is always a great opportunity when leaders and people do things. It's like, hey, can you tell me what do you think about that job that I did? Seek it out. Ask folks and tell them, be truthful with me. Because here's what you can't do. You can't improve if you don't know you need to. Communication needs of employees at lower levels. News, downward messages should reach employees in a timely manner. So if you're trying to get people to get something and get them to do it, and let's say this is Monday, and you want them to have something done by Wednesday, then you need to be getting this information to them ASAP on Monday. Don't wait till Tuesday afternoon. Social support, perception that one is cared for, esteemed, and valued. The most important assets of any organization are the people. Let them know that. Take care of the people. People know when they feel like you have their back, when you support them and you value them. And I don't mean lip service. I mean actual actions and stuff. You say it and you show it and you convey it to them. Upward communication. Management needs to listen closely to the employees. So management needs to listen too closely to the employees. Initiative and positive action, and sensitive to weak signals. Adaptability to different channels of employee information. Listen to people, employees. Employees will tell you the things not only that you want to hear, but they'll tell you the things you need to hear. And and regardless where it's coming from, I tell people I don't care if it's the trash lady all the way up to the CEO. Everybody has value in what they say. Difficulties, delay, slow movement of information to higher levels. So if you have information that's, because let's just say usually because either a couple of things, somebody's gotten too busy, they're not sending the information up, or somebody doesn't want to send it up because it's bad information. But delays can cause problems, and you don't want problems because people can't act on it when things are delayed. It needs to go up in a timely fashion. So questioning. Open questions introduce a broad topic and give people an opportunity to respond in many ways. So when you open things up, open questions, this is like, you know what? I'm seeking any information right here, and this is open. Feel free to reach out and say something or give input. Usually that's for the better. Closed questions. Focus on a narrow topic and invite the receiver to provide a specific response. So this is when you're looking at something in narrow in scope. And let's say you're working on a particular problem and you're asking for some feedback about that. Active listening requires hearing and use of mind. Helps receivers understand both the factual idea and the emotional message the sender intended. So when you're active listening, you're listening for the facts and you're listening for the message. You listen for all of that right there so that you can properly act on it or accept it. Right, guidelines for effective listening. Go ahead and pause right here and read through those. Upward communication practices. Employee meetings. Probe in depth about issues that are on employees' minds. So ask the folks when you're having employee meetings, ask folks questions. Encourage them to give input, but also explore and probe these sometimes when people feel like they may not be, you don't want to put people on the spot, but you ask for some feedback and solicit feedback when possible. Open door policy encourages employees to come to the higher management with any matter that concerns them. So this means that people have opportunities to come to management when they have the need to. Don't get me wrong, when you see open door policy, that doesn't mean to you run the management about everything that pops up under the sun. That's not the case. This is usually reserved for when you have things that are pretty important, urgent, or give you an example. If you're having a problem, let's say it is with your boss. Well, you can't go to the boss about something, so you have to go above him or her to management, senior management. Participation in social groups. Information gained on a spontaneous basis. So when you participate in social groups, here's what happens. You gain information on a spontaneous basis. Basically, when people come together like that, you learn from other people and they learn from you. You pick up things from them and they pick up things from you. Reveals true conditions better than most formal communications. This is a way right here when you have this happens, a lot of times because people are relaxed and they don't maybe not feel the pressures of work, then they may be inclined to speak more freely. Lateral communication. Communication across chains of communicating. So you have boundary spanners. Employees who play a role in lateral communication have strong communication links within their department, with people in other units, and with the external community. I'm gonna tell you who I call these people. I call these people, these are like the catalysts. These are the people who make things happen. These are the people, your go-to people, because usually they have strong communication with networks. And see, networks, groups of people who develop and maintain contact to exchange information. That's what your boundary spanners usually are. Those kind of people who have networks. Networking, being actively involved in a network, meaning you're actively involved in a network. Let's say it's accountants, and you're actively involved in a network of accountants, and you have connections that way. Pause right here and read through the suggestions for developing and using personal network. Electronic communication. Now, this is something that most people know about these days and stuff is really popular now versus 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago. Connecting people and in form of virtual community through internet sites and software programs. This is the way things are done now because technology allows us to do this. So you have people who work together, who are on teams, and they need to connect, and they live in different countries and different time zones. Wikis, web pages that enable their users to add or modify content. So you have people working together and they're adding content. This allows them to add stuff and modify it as they go. Wikipedia, collaborative, created, and constantly updated collection of articles. So this is where you go out there and look online, see Wikipedia. I've always found it to be a good source of information on a lot of different topics and stuff, and most people do. I do find it sometimes because this can be somewhat subjective, that you may not find it, may not be purposeful if you're actually writing a paper or a term paper or something along those lines. Electronic communication, electronic mail, computer-based communication system that allows the user to send a message someone simultaneously. So disadvantages: loss of face-to-face contact, temptation to send spontaneous and emotionally laden messages, risk of using acronyms and emotions that can be misunderstood. So there are some downfalls to that. One of the things I would tell people, sometimes people develop keyboard courage. And that means that they'll say something in a typed message that they would not say to you face to face. And to include letting their emotions come out or whatever else. And here's something too. You can't communicate with them instantaneously and talk to them because it's a message that was sent 6 hours ago. You're just not seeing it. Face-to-face, loss of the face-to-face contact is very big to me. Electronic communication, difficulty of accurately conveying and interpreting emotions in brief messages. One thing about messages, it doesn't convey your emotions and things along the lines a lot of times, or the sense of urgency about something. It's just not the same. Blogs, online diaries, or journals created and updated frequently by individuals. So you see people who have these online blogs and where they create stuff. And I've seen blogs where they've been useful, and I've seen blogs where it's just a total waste of time because there's somebody that is just basically talking about what food they ate on a daily basis. And then I've seen some other blogs out there where you talk about somebody who's in a certain career field and they're talking about things that they're encountering where it can be helpful. Twittering, expressing oneself in a brief message in real time to a self-selected network of interested people. When you look at this is a way of connecting. I would not encourage people to be connecting for work purposes through Twitter. I've seen it, but mostly it's primarily something social and something that could probably get you in trouble at work, usually, because some of the things are said in Twitter. Telecommuting, working electronically from home or satellite through an office link system. Personal advantages: freedom from distractions, workplace, reduced time, money spent on that, reduced expenditures for work-related clothing, ability to spend more time with family and friends. This is something that really came about at COVID-19, and when you start seeing a lot of people that were doing telecommuting. And it does work for some people for all these reasons they said. But for some of these reasons right here also, it doesn't work for some people. Some people were not disciplined enough to be doing this, working this way, and their productivity went down. Corporate advantages of this: improved productivity, employee loyalty, reduced space requirements, opportunity to hire key talent from a distant city, capacity to accommodate disabled and chronically ill employees. So you see the advantages right there of being able to hire somebody. Let's say that, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I have a business and I have a need, but I'm able to hire somebody from California to do it because they can telecommute. That's something that 20 years ago wasn't possible because we didn't do this. And it also enables people who might not be able to move about freely due to physical disabilities or recovering from illnesses and stuff to stay at home and work. Social benefit: reduction in auto traffic and pollution problems. Managers cannot have direct control over their employees. This is a problem particularly when you have someone who's not producing. They're underproductive and their work is not up to par. Now you have to try to manage this person from afar. I actually had a person that I was working with, a manager, who had this person lived in the continental US, and this manager was having to deal with somebody who was leaving work early, who was coming to work late, leaving work early and not doing what supposed to do, and this person was in England. So this again presents a problem. Possibility of being overlooked at promotion time. You know, the old thing, there's an old saying called out of sight, out of mind. Some people might get overlooked because they're not visible, because they're only working through telecommunication. So they don't get a chance to meet and greet people who are decision makers. Risk of getting burned out from the reputation to put in more hours daily. So sometimes you feel like, well, since I'm working from home, some people have actually told me this. I work from home, I work more hours at home. So because the office is right there, I can always just walk, every time I walk by it, I go in there and start doing things. So, and they've actually got burned out doing it. Feeling socially isolated. Okay, for some people, they're not outgoing people. So realistically, when they were getting out and meeting people and this and that, it was through their jobs. Well, when they're telecommuting, they're not doing that anymore. So you can feel a little isolated. Temptation to engage in household activities instead of working. And this is a very big one. If somebody's got a dog, a cat, and 2 kids in there, and they're trying to work, this right here can happen. Consequences of feeling isolated. So feeling out of touch with regular networks, unable to experience intellectual stimulation from peers, removed from informal channels of communication, insulated from most sources of social support. This is all true. And these are some of the things that with some folks, what they did is they actually said, I can work telecommute and I can work there 5 days a week. I choose to go in 2 days a week so that I don't have this feeling of isolation. Virtual offices. Physical office space and individual desks replaced with an array of portable communication tools. Employees can perform their work from anywhere. Risk, loss of opportunity for social interaction. So you see the virtual offices when they set up and people can work from anywhere. You know, employees still perform their work from anywhere, but you still have that potential loss of isolation of being involved with people. Grapevine. All informal communication systems coexist with formal communications. Electronic messages are flashed on the computer screen. Features, cluster change. Each link in the chain informs a cluster of other people instead of just only one. Liaison individual. Active communicators on the grapevine for any specific unit of information. So used to be before technology, the grapevine is like stuff you hear through word of mouth. And that's the concept right here when they use the word grapevine. That's where it comes from. People say, well, how did you find out about it? Well, I heard it through the grapevine. And so that's where it comes from. So when you see these messages are flashed up and you see they have the features, how they work. And it is a good thing. And to put a message out there for multiple people to see simultaneously. Factors that encourage grapevine activity. Work that allows conversation. A job that provides information desired by others. Personality of communicator. Excitement or insecurity. Involvement of friends and associates. Recent information. Procedure that brings people into contact. So when you talk about the grapevine, you are talking about something that is generated, that is initiated and generated, and it is supported through people. Rumor, grapevine information communicated without secure standards of evidence being present. Elaborating, adding new details in order to include one's own strong feelings, judgment, and reasoning. Types, historical, explanational, explanatory, spontaneous, and action-oriented, negative, or positive. So when you start getting rumors, this is much more likely to be fact-based. It's a lot of times can be based upon someone's opinion. And guess what? Opinions a lot of times are based on any number of things and not necessarily rooted in fact. And this is where you can get in trouble in these particular 6 instances. Guidelines for control of that. Remove its causes in order to prevent it. Apply efforts primarily to serious rumors. Refute rumors with facts. Deal with rumors as soon as possible. Emphasize the face-to-face supply of facts confirmed in writing necessary. Provide facts from reliable sources. Refrain from repeating rumor while refuting it. Encourage assistance of informal and union leaders if they are cooperative. Listen to all rumors in order to understand what they mean. This is all people driven, and this is all stuff that a lot of times you have to hit it dead on the head and deal with it head on and address it to make sure particularly rumors that are unfounded or not based on fact, that you put them to sleep really quick. Otherwise, they will grow legs and start running and eventually grow wings and start flying. And that you don't want to have. That concludes this chapter.